December 2, 1993, Medellín, Colombia. A city at war. Explosions echo through the streets. Car bombs, assassinations. Entire neighborhoods controlled by armed teenagers. And at the center of it all, one man, Pablo Escobar, the most wanted criminal on earth, the most powerful drug lord in history, and according to Forbes magazine, the 7th richest man in the world, with an estimated fortune of $30 billion, built on cocaine. According to DEA estimates, at his peak, Pablo controlled 80% of the global cocaine trade. His organization moved 15 tons per day. That's 420 million per week. In cash. He built tunnels under the U.S.-Mexico border. He owned submarines. He bribed presidents. He assassinated presidential candidates. He bombed commercial airliners out of the sky. And he did it all while calling himself a man of the people. But Pablo Escobar wasn't a revolutionary. He wasn't a freedom fighter. According to Colombian authorities, he was a businessman, a CEO, who happened to run the most profitable criminal enterprise in human history. And his product? Addiction. This isn't a crime story. This is the story of an empire, built on blood, fueled by greed, and destroyed by its own success. Because Pablo Escobar proved one thing: you can have all the money in the world, but if you're at war with the world, no amount of money can save you. This is the story of how Pablo Escobar became a billionaire, and how that $1 billion killed him. This is history's wealth, where money tells the story of power. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was born on December 1, 1949, in Rio Negro, Colombia, a small town near Medellín. His father was a farmer. His mother was a schoolteacher. They weren't rich, but they weren't poor either. Middle class, ordinary. And in 1950s Colombia, ordinary meant limited. Limited opportunities, limited options, limited futures. But Pablo had no intention of staying ordinary. Medellín in the 1960s was a city of contrasts. Wealthy neighborhoods in the hills, slums in the valleys, and in between, a generation of young men with nothing to lose. Pablo was one of them. By age 15, according to childhood friends interviewed later, Pablo was already running scams, small crimes, stealing gravestones and reselling them, selling fake lottery tickets, stealing cars. Nothing that would make him rich, but everything that taught him one lesson. In Colombia, if you wanted power, you needed money. And if you wanted money, you couldn't follow the rules. In the early 1970s, Pablo escalated. He moved into smuggling, cigarettes from Panama, electronics from the United States, anything that could be bought cheap abroad and sold expensive in Colombia. He made connections, learned the routes, bribed the customs officials, and discovered that Colombia's borders were wide open for the right price. By 1974, according to Colombian police records, Pablo had made his first $100,000, not from drugs, from contraband. But contraband had limits. The buy margins weren't high enough. The scale wasn't big enough. And then Pablo discovered something that would change his life: cocaine. In the 1970s, cocaine was exploding in the United States. Studio 54 in New York, Hollywood parties in Los Angeles, Wall Street, Washington, D.C. Everyone wanted it, and the demand was insane. But getting cocaine from South America to the U.S. was complicated. The coca leaves were grown in Peru and Bolivia. They were processed into paste in the jungle, then refined into powder in Colombia. But smuggling it into the U.S. required planes, boats, pilots, and networks. Most traffickers were small-time, moving 10 kilos here, 20 kilos there, making good money, but nothing transformative. Pablo saw the opportunity. He didn't want to be a smuggler. He wanted to be the system. According to testimony from former associates, here's what Pablo realized. In Colombia, 1 kilogram of cocaine cost $1,000 to produce. In the United States, that same kilogram sold for $50,000, $60,000, a 5,000% markup. No legal business on earth had margins like that. And the market was limitless. Americans couldn't get enough, so Pablo did what any ambitious entrepreneur would do. He scaled. Pablo didn't work alone. In the late 1970s, he partnered with 3 other traffickers: Jorge Luis Ochoa, from a wealthy cattle ranching family with connections to legitimate businesses; Jose Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha, known as the Mexican, who controlled emerald mines and had an army of enforcers; Carlos later, a German Colombian who owned Norman's Cay, a private island in the Bahamas with its own airstrip. Together they formed what became known as the Medellín Cartel. But according to DEA assessments, Pablo was always the leader, not because he was the richest, not because he was the smartest, but because he was the most ruthless, and he understood something the others didn't. To build an empire, you needed more than cocaine. You needed fear. In 1975, according to Colombian court documents, Pablo ordered his first high-profile murder, a Medellín drug dealer named Fabio Restrepo. Restrepo had been Pablo's mentor. He taught Pablo the cocaine routes, the contacts, the tricks, and then Pablo killed him. Why? Because Restrepo knew too much, and because Pablo wanted his network. After Restrepo's death, Pablo took over his entire operation, and he sent a message to everyone in Medellín. Loyalty is temporary. Power is permanent. By 1978, according to DEA reports, Pablo had built something unprecedented, a vertically integrated cocaine empire. Pablo controlled labs in the Colombian jungle. He bought coca paste in bulk from Peru and Bolivia. Chemists refined it into powder. Output, tons per week. Pablo owned dozens of small planes, pilots willing to risk their lives. Carlos later's island as a refueling station. Speedboats for coastal routes. Tunnels, later. Submarines, later. If a plane was intercepted, he didn't care. The profit margin was so high that losing 20% of shipments was just a cost of doing business. The cocaine reached Miami. From there, it spread across the U.S. Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, Houston. Pablo didn't sell to users. He sold to wholesalers. They sold to distributors. Distributors sold to dealers. Dealers sold to users. Everyone made money, but Pablo made the most because he controlled the supply. And here's where it got complicated. By 1982, according to Roberto Escobar, Pablo's brother and accountant, the cartel was making $420 million per week. That's $60 million per day, in cash, mostly $20 bills. And cash has a problem. You can't just deposit $60 million a day into a bank. So Pablo had to hide it. He buried it in farms. He stored it in warehouses. He kept it in walls. And according to Roberto's later testimony, they spent $12,500 per week just on rubber bands to wrap the cash. But even that wasn't enough. Roberto estimated that the cartel lost approximately $2.1 billion per year. Not to theft, to rats. Literally, rats eating the money. Water damage, mold. Pablo Escobar was so rich that he could afford to lose $2 billion a year to rodents and not even notice. By 1982, according to Forbes estimates, Pablo Escobar was worth $3 billion. By 1989, $30 billion. He wasn't just the richest criminal in the world. He was richer than most legitimate businessmen, and he ran his empire like a Fortune 500 company. According to testimony from former cartel members, Pablo's organization had clear divisions. Production. Division, chemists who refined coca paste lab managers who oversaw quality control, suppliers who bought raw materials. Logistics division, pilots who flew the drugs, boat captains who transported by sea tunnel engineers. Later, submarine builders. Later, security division, sicarios, hitmen, who eliminated threats, bodyguards who protected Pablo enforcers who collected debts, finance division, accountants who tracked the money, money launderers who cleaned it, bankers who moved it offshore, political division, lawyers who defended cartel members, politicians who took bribes, police officers who provided protection. It wasn't a gang. According to DEA analysis, it was a corporation with departments, hierarchies, performance reviews, and bonuses. If you performed well, you got rich. If you failed, you died. Pablo didn't just make billions. He had to hide billions. According to financial investigators, here's how he did it. Method 1. Shell companies. Pablo created hundreds of fake businesses, construction companies, import-export firms, taxi services, nightclubs. The businesses were fronts. They didn't actually do much business, but they provided a way to deposit cash and claim it was revenue. Method 2. Real estate. Pablo bought apartments and Miami ranches in Colombia, hotels in Panama, land across Latin America. He paid in cash. The properties appreciated, and when he sold them, the money was clean. Method 3. Offshore banks. Pablo moved money to Panama, Switzerland, Cayman Islands, Liechtenstein. These banks didn't ask questions, they just took deposits. And according to later investigations, some bankers actively helped Pablo hide his money. Method 4. Legitimate investments. Pablo invested in soccer teams, car dealerships, pharmacies, farms. These businesses were real. They made real money, and they helped disguise his drug profits. In 1982, Pablo did something bold. He ran for Congress. He got elected as an alternate representative. Why would a drug lord want political office? Because in Colombia, members of Congress had immunity from extradition, and extradition to the United States was Pablo's greatest fear. In Colombia, Pablo could bribe judges, he could threaten prosecutors, he could kill witnesses, but in the U.S., he had no power. So he bought his way into politics. He funded housing projects for the poor. He built soccer fields. He gave money to churches. And the people of Medellín loved him. They called him Robin Hood. But Robin Hood didn't murder journalists. Pablo's political career didn't last long. In 1984, Colombia's Minister of Justice, Rodrigo Lara Bonilla, publicly accused Pablo of being a drug trafficker. Lara presented evidence. He called for Pablo to be expelled from Congress, and he pushed for Colombia to reinstate its extradition treaty with the United States. Pablo tried to bribe him. According to court testimony, he offered Lara millions. Lara refused. So on April 30th, 1984, Pablo ordered his assassination. 2 sicarios on a motorcycle pulled up next to Lara's car in Bogotá and shot him dead. The murder shocked Colombia. President Belisario Betancourt reinstated the extradition treaty and declared war on the Medellín Cartel. Pablo went into hiding, but he didn't retreat. He escalated. Between 1984 and 1993, according to human rights organizations, Pablo Escobar's organization was responsible for over 4,000 deaths. That number includes over 200 judges, dozens of journalists, more than 1,000 police officers, 3 presidential candidates, countless civilians. Pablo's strategy, according to DEA reports, was simple: terror. Make the cost of fighting him so high that the government would negotiate. In November 1985, a leftist guerrilla group called M19 stormed Colombia's Supreme Court building. They took the justices hostage. The Colombian military responded with overwhelming force. The building caught fire. Over 100 people died, including 11 Supreme Court justices. And according to later investigations, Pablo Escobar funded the attack. Why? Because the Supreme Court was reviewing extradition cases, including his. When the building burned, the files burned with it. On November 27, 1989, Avianca Flight 203 took off from Bogotá. Destination, Cali. 7 minutes after takeoff, a bomb exploded. The plane disintegrated. All 107 people on board died. According to investigations, Pablo ordered the bombing. The target? Presidential candidate Cesar Gaviria. But Gaviria wasn't on the plane. He had changed his travel plans at the last minute. 107 innocent people died. For nothing. Pablo had a philosophy. He called it plata o plomo, silver or lead, money or bullets. Work with me and you get rich. Oppose me and you die. According to accounts from officials who dealt with Pablo, he applied this to everyone: police, judges, politicians, journalists. And it worked, because most people chose silver. By 1989, according to Forbes, Pablo Escobar was the 7th richest man on earth. His estimated net worth, $30 billion. He owned Hacienda Nápoles, a 7,000-acre estate with a private zoo, hippos, elephants, giraffes, hundreds of properties across Columbia Plains, helicopters, boats, a private army. He controlled 80% of the global cocaine trade, and he was untouchable until he wasn't. By 1989, Pablo Escobar wasn't just a criminal. According to the Colombian government, he was an existential threat. The murder of presidential candidate Luis Carlos Galán in August 1989 changed everything. Galán was assassinated on Pablo's orders, and the United States decided enough was enough. President George H.W. Bush authorized DEA agents in Colombia, CIA, intelligence support to military advisors, millions of dollars in aid. The message was clear: capture or kill Pablo Escobar. In June 1991, facing overwhelming pressure, Pablo negotiated a deal with the Colombian government. He would surrender. In exchange, no extradition to the U.S. He would serve time in a prison of his own design. The prison was called La Catedral, the cathedral. But according to visitors' accounts, it wasn't a prison. It was a luxury compound. La Catedral had a soccer field, a bar, a waterfall, jacuzzi disco, gourmet kitchen. Pablo lived there with his bodyguards. He held meetings. He ordered murders. He even had rivals brought to the prison and killed inside. The Colombian government knew, but they were too afraid to act until July 1992, when the government decided to transfer Pablo to a real prison. Pablo found out, and he walked out. Just walked out. Nobody stopped him, because his guards worked for him. For the next 16 months, Pablo was a fugitive. The Colombian government created a special task force, Search Block, elite soldiers and police trained by the DEA. Their mission, find Pablo Escobar, dead or alive. In 1992, a new group emerged, Los Pepes, people persecuted by Pablo Escobar. According to reports, Los Pepes was funded by the Cali cartel and supported by rogue members of Colombian security forces. Their strategy? Destroy everything Pablo loved. They didn't go after Pablo directly. They went after his family, his lawyers, his accountants, his properties. Between 1992 and 1993, Los Pepes killed over 300 people associated with Pablo. They burned his ranches. They bombed his safe houses. And slowly, Pablo's empire crumbled. By November 1993, according to intercepted communications, Pablo was desperate. He was running out of money, running out of allies, running out of safe houses. The government was tracking his phone calls. Los Pepes were killing his associates, and his sicarios were surrendering. Pablo tried to negotiate. He offered to surrender. He offered to leave Colombia. The government refused. There would be no more deals. On the afternoon of December 2, 1993, Pablo made a phone call to his son, Juan Pablo. It lasted too long. Colombian intelligence traced the signal to a middle-class neighborhood in Medellín. Search Block surrounded the building. Pablo knew they were coming. He tried to run. He climbed onto the roof, and according to the official report, he was shot 3 times. Once in the leg, once in the back, once through the ear. Pablo Escobar died on that rooftop at age 44, the 7th richest man on earth, killed like a cornered animal. Search Block took a photo. Pablo's body on the red tiles, blood pooling around his head, eyes open, and they distributed it to every media outlet in Colombia. The message, the war is over, we won, but the question remains, who fired the fatal shot? Some say it was Search Block, others say it was Los Pepes, and some believe Pablo shot himself, because Pablo had always said, I'd rather die in Colombia than spend one day in a U.S. prison. We'll never know for sure. Pablo Escobar is dead, but his empire never really died. $30 billion. That's what Pablo was worth at his peak. But when he died, Colombian authorities found almost nothing. A few properties, some cash, but the vast majority? Gone. According to Roberto Escobar, approximately $25 billion is still hidden, buried in farms, stored in walls, in vaults that only Pablo knew about. And when Pablo died, the locations died with him. Some has been found. In 2020, $18 million was discovered hidden in a wall in Medellín. Farmers occasionally find buried cash, but most of it still out there, rotting or already destroyed by time. Pablo didn't just leave money, he left infrastructure. According to DEA reports, the smuggling routes Pablo established are still used today. The Sinaloa Cartel, the Jalisco, New Generation Cartel, Brazilian cartels, they all follow Pablo's blueprint, because Pablo proved cocaine could be moved in industrial quantities, and that model never died. In Medellín, some still revere Pablo. Tourists visit his grave. They take selfies at Hacienda Nápoles. They buy Pablo Escobar merchandise. But according to victims' families, those tourists ignore the 4,000+ people he killed, the families he destroyed, the country he destabilized. Pablo Escobar wasn't Robin Hood. He was a businessman who sold death. According to analysts who study organized crime, Pablo's story teaches one thing: money can buy almost anything, but it can't buy time, and it can't buy loyalty when everyone knows you're going to lose. Pablo had $30 billion, but in the end, he died alone, hunted, abandoned, and betrayed by the empire he built, because power built on fear only lasts as long as people fear you more than they fear your enemies. And once that balance shifts, no amount of money can save you. Pablo Escobar died in 1993, but according to law enforcement, his business model didn't. Today, cocaine production is at all-time highs. Cartels are more sophisticated. Violence continues. Pablo didn't create the drug trade, but he industrialized it. He proved it could be done, and every trafficker since has studied his playbook. The money, the violence, the corruption, it all came from Pablo, and it's all still here. In the end, Pablo Escobar's story isn't about cocaine. It's about ambition. Unchecked, unrestrained, pathological ambition. The kind of ambition that builds empires and destroys them. Pablo wanted to be the richest man in Colombia. He achieved it. He wanted to be untouchable. For a while, he was. He wanted to be president. That's what killed him, because there's a limit to how much power one man can accumulate before the system reacts. And when the system reacts, all the money in the world can't protect you. Pablo Escobar made $420 million per week, but he couldn't spend it fast enough. He lost $2 billion per year to rats. He buried $25 billion that was never recovered. And in the end, he died with nothing, just a bullet, on a rooftop, in the city he once controlled. Pablo's empire didn't end with his death. It evolved. New cartels, new routes, new methods, but the same violence, the same corruption, the same addiction. Because Pablo proved something. As long as there's demand, there will be supply. And as long as there's supply, there will be men willing to kill for it. The cycle continues. Subscribe to History's Wealth, where we expose the empires built on blood and the systems that make them possible. Because in the end, history doesn't repeat itself. It teaches. And those who listen survive.